What's going on, everybody? Potato J here. Today we are talking about crop factors, but I think I'm going to title this video why I don't shoot with full frame cameras. I think that's a little bit more interesting sounding than understanding crop factors. I don't know, I might one day switch to a full frame camera, so if that day ever comes, then this video will awkwardly be sitting in my video playlist, but I don't really like to think that far ahead. So we're Gucci. I probably shouldn't say that word, Gucci. In order to be allowed to say that word, you have to have a certain level of swag. If you have more than that level of swag, then you can say it all you want. It sounds good, it works. But if you're below that line, you just sound stupid. I'm like right there, like I can almost say it, but it's just better for the entire planet if I never use that word again. What was this video about again? Oh, crop factors. The biggest misconception is that all 35mm sensors are the same, which is very much not true. It sounds about right? Like if someone says my sensor is 35mm, you're probably like, oh, that's probably the dimension of the width or height or something like that, but it's actually not true. And if someone tells you their sensor size is 35mm, it could mean something very, very different. It all goes back to before we had digital cameras to when everything was shot on film, you know, those long film strip that you imagine people in a dark red room like snipping away at and cutting together. 35mm film is a strip and it's 35mm wide. Now let's start by talking about photography. In a film camera, you take this 35mm, you stick it on one side, you stretch it over the other side, close it up, and the film goes through horizontally. It burns that image straight onto that film strip, utilizing as much space as it can without flooding over. And the image you can place within that space is about 36 by 24. And they call that 35mm in photography because it's on a 35mm film strip, not because of the dimensions of the photography. So if you hear full frame 35mm, it generally refers to photography, which is this size. The Canon 1D series, the 5Ds, 6Ds, and a bunch of other cameras out there that shoot full frame in photography, that's the size that they're referring to. Now here's where people get thrown off is they hear super 35 or 35mm for video, which is actually a very, very different size. And the main reason is because in traditional film movie cameras, the film gets fed in vertically, so it goes up and down. For example, this is a 16 by 9 frame that you're looking at. Let's squeeze this down and fit it onto a film strip. Now, if you look at throwing it on a vertical film strip, notice you have to compress it way down because of the edges here. If I go any further out this way, then it's gonna bleed out onto the holy part. I'm sure there's a proper name for that. I never shot film, but let's take the same image, throw it onto the horizontal one, then you can stretch it way bigger. So that is why Super 35 or 35mm film for video is much smaller. And cameras that utilize the Super 35mm sensor are like the Sony FS7, the Canon C300 Mark II, this Red camera, a majority of Arri Alexas. Now that we're going digital, we're no longer really restricted to this 35mm film strip, so companies are exploring these larger sensors like the Sony Venice, the Arri Alexa LF, and the Red VistaVision Monstro. But keep in mind that 99% of everything you see on TV and theaters are still shot on Super 35mm sensor sizes. So to summarize, the two you're gonna hear most often is full frame 35mm, which is the big one for photography, and Super 35, which is the most common one for video, which is the vertically fed one, so it's a little bit smaller. Full frame, big, Super 35, small. Now, when it comes to smaller cameras like this Canon M50, a lot of times the sensor's smaller and it's cropped in a bit, which has crop factor. This is one of the most common sensors. It's an aps-c sensor, which has a 1.6 times crop factor. And some cameras like the Micro Four Thirds cameras have a 2 times crop factor. So if you're shooting on the same lens, if you're shooting with a cropped in sensor, it just appears to be more zoomed in. So for example, right now I have a 1.6 crop factor on this camera and I'm shooting on a 10mm. But since it has that 1.6 crop factor, it looks more like a 16mm. If I zoom it in, let's say now this is at 18, it's 18 times 1.6, which is... Someone give me an abacus quick. Now, when we say a 1.6 crop factor for something like this, we're saying it's a 1.6 times crop to a full frame 35mm, not a Super 35, a full frame 35mm. So yeah, a 1.6 crop factor sensor is quite a bit smaller than a full frame 35mm sensor, but it's actually not too different from a super 35mm sensor. So the sensor size between this and this might not actually be as big as you think. So basically, if you tag an awesome lens onto this camera to try to get cinematic images, the sensor size is not gonna be the thing that's gonna limit you from getting awesome images. I've considered going to a full frame camera a couple times, specifically the 6D Mark II looks pretty appealing to me. Now, aside from it being much bigger and more expensive than this camera, you also have to go to a full frame lens. This lens is much cheaper and much smaller because it only has to cover an aps-c sensor. Once you get a lens that can cover the entire 35mm full frame sensor, then you can't use this. You have to go to a much bigger lens. That thing is big, heavy, and expensive. Another reason why a lot of people love full frame is for shallow depth of field. It looks awesome. Admit it, we're all a little bit overly obsessed with shallow depth of field. It looks awesome. But have you ever tried to focus on somebody going in and out from the camera and trying to keep them in focus the whole time? It is tough. Autofocus is getting much better on cameras, so that's becoming less and less of an issue, but there's still plenty of people shooting out there manual focus for video for a good reason, and doing this motion with a full frame camera with like an f1.8 would be like impossible. You would lose focus on me so fast. I'm definitely not saying aps-c and super 35mm sensors are better than full frame. That's just the reasons why I personally shoot with this 1.6 crop factor camera. Also keep in mind that I only really shoot video. If you shoot a lot of photography, then full frame makes a lot more sense. You can go as shallow as you want in photography because you only need that perfect, precise focus for that split second. You don't have to keep the subject in focus consistently for a long period of time. And with those big old sensors, they generally have really good low light capabilities. And Arri, my absolute favorite camera company, they make the Arri Alexa. People have always asked them why they don't put more pixels in their sensors. They obviously have the technology to do that now, but they say when they take their sensor, throw more pixels in there, then they have to take every pixel and make them even smaller. And they always say they prefer the quality of a pixel over the quantity of it. So hey, Arri says big sensors are a good thing. I do think when you go to a full frame sensor and get that bigger sensor, you do get an improvement of quality. I really want to test out a side-by-side comparison with something like this to like a 1DX or 6D Mark II and see side by side, like how much of a difference does it actually make when you're literally looking at them side by side. Is that something you guys might want to see? If enough of you guys want to see that, then I might put that on the to make video list. My guess is that there is going to be image improvements, but I think this is going to come super closer than most people think, because I do think a lot of it is also kind of mental. Like if you're shooting full frame, you're like, wow, this is full frame, I'm shooting full frame. But I'm telling you, the results out of these little guys, pretty solid. The sensor size obviously makes a big difference, but at the same time, it's still, again, just a small part of the big picture. Anyways, enough about crop factors. I think you guys get the point. But I'm also putting together a full video course. But I want to hear from you guys. If there's one thing that you guys want to hear me talk about or answer a question, let me know in the comments, and I'll try to include as much of it as I can in the full course. I'll see you guys later. I'm heading to Mexico next week, a city called Laredo. Never been there, don't know much about it, but apparently it's only like a 2-hour flight from Los Angeles. Beautiful beaches, tequila, should be a good time. I'll finally be able to test this thing out. Polar Pro sent it to me, but apparently you stick your GoPro in there and you can get shots where it's half above water and half below. Should be interesting. I'll do a giveaway on this too next time. So yeah, see you guys later.